John and Emma booked an Uber that night, but they never made it home. The driver didn't want to take them where they were going. They had no idea someone was waiting for them somewhere along a lonely forest road. And before the night was over, everything went terribly wrong. John and Emma had arrived in North Carolina to visit John's grandparents after several years. His grandparents lived in a small village nearly 4 hours away from Asheville Regional Airport, so after landing a little after 10 p.m., John booked an Uber to take them there. A few minutes later, a black SUV pulled up outside the terminal. John placed their luggage in the back while Emma sat behind the front passenger seat. John sat behind the driver, leaving the middle seat between them empty. The driver confirmed their destination, entered it into the GPS, and a strange smile briefly appeared on his face before he started the engine. Emma noticed it. She didn't understand why the driver had smiled like that, but she didn't say anything. The ride began. For the next 20 minutes, everything felt completely normal. John and Emma talked about finally seeing his grandparents again after several years, while the driver remained completely silent. The city slowly disappeared behind them. Soon, the SUV entered a long, isolated forest road. There were no houses, no gas stations, and almost no other cars. The deeper they drove into the forest, the quieter the driver became. Soft music played through the speakers while John and Emma continued talking in the back. The driver didn't say a single word. His eyes stayed on the road, until for just a second, he looked into the rearview mirror. Emma didn't notice. She was still listening as John told her they would reach his grandparents' village shortly after crossing the forest. Several more minutes passed. The driver looked into the rearview mirror again. This time, a small smile appeared on his face. Emma noticed it immediately. It was the same strange smile she had seen when he entered the destination into the GPS. She looked at the driver for a few seconds before turning back toward the window. A few more minutes passed. The driver glanced into the rearview mirror once again. The same smile appeared. Emma slowly leaned closer to John. "I think the driver keeps looking at me." John looked toward the front for a moment. "He's probably checking the traffic behind us. Don't worry." Emma nodded. She looked back out the window, but she couldn't stop thinking about the driver's strange smile. Emma tried to ignore the strange feeling, but only a few minutes later, the driver looked into the rearview mirror again. The same smile slowly appeared on his face before disappearing just as quickly. This time, Emma was certain he wasn't looking at the road behind them. She kept watching him for a few more seconds before quietly leaning toward John. "He did it again," she whispered. John looked at the driver for a moment, then calmly replied, "Emma, he's probably checking the traffic behind us. Don't overthink it." Emma wanted to believe him, but something about the driver's smile didn't feel normal. The SUV continued deeper into the forest. Outside, there was nothing except endless trees and darkness. The driver remained completely silent. A few more minutes passed before he looked into the rearview mirror once again. This time, there was no smile. His expression suddenly became serious, almost as if something had caught his attention. Emma followed his eyes, but all she could see in the mirror was herself and John sitting behind him. She slowly looked away, but the uneasy feeling in her chest kept growing. Without saying a word, the driver picked up his phone from the center console and shared his live location with someone. Emma noticed it immediately. She grabbed John's arm and quietly said, "John, he just shared his location with someone." John's expression changed. He slowly looked out of the window. The road had become even darker than before. There were no houses, no lights, no passing cars, only the deep forest surrounding them from every direction. Keeping his voice low, John leaned closer and whispered, "Call 911, just in case." Trying not to let the driver notice, Emma slowly took out her phone and began dialing 911 beneath her jacket. Before she could press the call button, the driver suddenly reached toward the dashboard and turned the FM radio up so loudly that it filled the entire SUV. Emma instantly froze. She slowly looked toward John and John looked at the driver. Neither of them said a single word. The only sound inside the SUV was the loud music and the tires rolling deeper into the dark forest. The loud music made the silence inside the SUV even more uncomfortable. John looked at Emma, then back at the driver. He had ignored the strange smiles. He had ignored the location sharing. But after watching the driver's behavior for nearly an hour, he couldn't ignore it anymore. Leaning slightly forward, John said, "Excuse me." The driver reached over and turned the music down. He didn't say a word. John looked straight at him. "Why do you keep looking at my wife and smiling?" For a few seconds, the driver didn't answer. His hands remained tightly wrapped around the steering wheel as he continued driving through the dark forest. Then, without taking his eyes off the road, he quietly replied, "I'm not looking at your wife. I'm smiling at the little girl sitting between you." The words hit the SUV like a gunshot. John and Emma looked at each other, completely confused. Emma immediately turned toward the empty seat between them. There was nothing there. She looked back at John, then at the driver. "What little girl?" she asked, her voice shaking. The driver frowned. "The little girl sitting between you. She's been smiling at me for the last several miles. She hasn't looked away once." John's face changed instantly. "Are you out of your mind?" he snapped. "There's nobody else in this car. It's just me and my wife." The driver finally glanced into the rearview mirror for a split second before looking back at the road. His expression slowly changed. For the first time since the trip began, he looked genuinely confused. Neither side believed the other. John was now convinced the driver was mentally unstable or trying to scare them on purpose. At the same time, the driver couldn't understand why the couple kept insisting they were alone. The little girl was still sitting exactly where she had been before, quietly holding her doll and smiling toward the front of the SUV. The atmosphere inside the vehicle became unbearable. No one spoke again. The music continued playing in the background as the SUV disappeared deeper into the forest, while three people inside the vehicle believed someone else was lying. The SUV disappeared deeper into the forest as complete silence settled inside the cabin. After the driver claimed there was a little girl sitting between them, nobody spoke another word. The music continued playing quietly through the speakers, but none of them seemed to hear it anymore. John kept watching the driver through the rear-view mirror, while Emma avoided looking toward the empty space between them. She wanted to believe the driver was lying, yet something about the fear on his face didn't look fake. After several long seconds, the driver slowly gathered the courage to look into the rearview mirror one more time. The little girl was still there. She hadn't moved. She was sitting exactly between John and Emma, with the same old doll resting in her lap, smiling at him exactly the way she had before. The driver's heartbeat became heavier as he immediately looked back at the road, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel without realizing it. From the back seat, John noticed every small change in the driver's behavior. The nervous grip on the steering wheel, the uneasy expression on his face, the quick glance toward the mirror. None of it made him feel safer. To John and Emma, the driver looked like a man trying to hide something. Without saying a word, both of them had already reached the same conclusion. They needed to get out of the SUV before whatever the driver had planned finally happened. Keeping their movements as natural as possible, John quietly reached for the door handle while Emma did the same on her side. Both tried unlocking their doors without letting the driver notice. Neither door opened. The driver remained focused on the road, unaware of what the couple was doing behind him. Then, something appeared in the darkness ahead. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow standing in the middle of the road. His breathing became uneven as his eyes locked onto the figure. Almost instinctively, he pressed harder on the accelerator, trying to get the SUV past it as quickly as possible. But instead of gaining speed, the vehicle began slowing down. He pressed harder again. The SUV slowed even more. A cold wave of fear ran through his body. Could what I'd heard actually be true? Or did they actually reach someone? From the back seat, John felt the SUV slowing down and looked through the windshield. The dark figure ahead became easier to see with every passing second. His heart immediately sank. Emma noticed it too. Neither of them believed the driver was trying to escape anymore. In their minds, there was only one explanation left. The person the driver had secretly shared his location with had finally arrived, and he was slowing the SUV down on purpose. The shadow stood perfectly still as the vehicle rolled closer through the darkness. Then, a soft little girl's voice came from the middle seat.
"Stop the car. My mom came to take us home."
The voice was so clear that John, Emma, and the driver all heard it. All three of them turned toward the middle seat at the exact same moment, then slowly looked back toward the road. The shadow was no longer just a shadow. A woman dressed in white was standing silently in the middle of the forest road. The driver had heard a story about that forest road. That's why, at that moment, he thought, could what I'd heard actually be true? People said a family, a husband, a wife, and their 6-year-old daughter, had died there after a horrific crash. Rescue crews found the bodies of the husband and wife inside the wreckage, but their 6-year-old daughter was never found. Some believed she had wandered into the forest in shock. Others believed someone had taken her before help arrived. But the people who lived near that road told a different story. They believed the little girl never left that place. They said her mother still returned to the exact spot where the accident happened, waiting every night for the daughter she believed had been taken away from her. They believed that one day, her little girl would finally come home. That was why the SUV slowed down on its own. It happened at the exact place where the accident had occurred. Standing at that very spot was the woman in white, waiting for her daughter. When his wife texted asking where he was, the driver never replied. Instead, he tapped share location without taking his eyes off the road. The location was never delivered because there was no signal. After seeing him send something on his phone, Emma quietly tried calling 911, but the call never connected for the same reason. And the warning message John's grandfather had sent, telling them never to take that road after dark, never reached his phone either. The next morning, a highway patrol officer found an SUV sitting alone on the side of the forest road. The engine was off. The doors were closed. There was no sign of the driver, no sign of John, no sign of Emma. On the middle seat, there was only an old doll, and John and Emma never reached home.